like you can't use it to immediately exploit something, but it's the classic thing which we see inside enterprises where people say, yeah, I'm going to call the machines after what they do, which is great for attackers, because it's great for admins, but it's also great for attackers. And the way that some of their administration practices and the way they allocate virtual machines kind of means that you shouldn't think, I'm in the cloud, so I'm kind of invisible. Yeah, like someone can't be on the same physical host. Well, they've proved that you can be. So call for researchers. I think, forget hypervisors for a minute, and I don't mean that. I still think it's a good area to look at, but it's like looking at hypervisor security is doing this. Yeah. So, and there's some really talented people that look at hypervisor security, but it'd be great if they also cast their eye a bit wider and looked at all this like newfangled software that's being kind of welded together. So, really I'd say again, you could be here next year talking about some actual hardcore stuff rather than my high-level flannel that I'm giving you now. Right, another beer chance. I need to finish in a minute. So, who is this Enlighted Provider? They're a cloud provider, which means that they're either infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. Who is this? Any idea? Because this is pretty radical. I didn't have space to put the conditions in. The conditions are reasonable if you're, it's fairly balanced. It's pretty reasonable. Anyone know who's got this policy? They only pushed it out a couple of weeks ago. No, you won't have them publishing this. Nope. Yes, Salesforce. That man wins a beer. Well played. Yeah, Salesforce did, and I want to applaud them in front of you guys, just to say, that's enlightened. Yeah, they're smart enough to know that researchers will have a pop anyway. They'll probably find some stuff, and what they're saying is, look, we're not going to prosecute you. There's some pretty reasonable criteria. Initially, I read the criteria. I was like, that seems really limited. But then you can use your brain and think of a couple of ways to stick within those limits and still actually do useful research. So, that's really good, and that's the first provider I know that's actually saying this. Because how can we do vulnerability research, and actually disclose the results if we think we're going to get prosecuted? It's just going to either get hidden or it's going to be dumped on a disclosure mailing list. And then, with software as a service or any of these services, if it's dumped on a mailing list, it's like how fast can the provider scramble to fix the stuff? Because suddenly everybody's like, wow, I can just drain all the data out of this cloud provider because I've got this thing that's on a mailing list. So that's that one. Resources, bedtime reading. Probably won't want to read this tonight, but this is the best document in terms of security guidance right now. So if you're a defender and you're needing to think about cloud stuff because your CIO came along and said, we're going to go cloud, really you should get this. Version 2 is about to come out, and it's a major rewrite, so probably worth waiting for version 2. It should be the next week or two. Really worth a read, and if you want to be proactive, you can join this group as well. It's a non-profit group, and they accept vendors, customers. You don't have to be, or just individuals. So it's a great way to actually shape some of the advice that's going out there. This is my website. Feel free to visit. And this is Chris's website. Chris, genius, really smart guy, very entertaining blogger. Definitely read this. And yeah, so the end of the night, you've had too much. This is the same here. So for those of you that still have your eyes open, that should be. You don't need to change your glasses. Someone was hinting they need to change. You'd have to change your eyes. That's it. We have finished. We've come to the end. You're free.
Okay, any questions?
There's one over there and one over there. We've got a race condition.
Okay. You mentioned the legal problems. In the US, I think it's the Patriot Act that allows the FBI to go to the data center and save some data. Do you know the legal situation in Europe and some countries?
The simple answer is I don't. There's ENISA. Do you know ENISA? It's the European Network Information Security Agency. So I'm in a group that's working with them to try and figure out some, it's called a risk assessment for cloud, and it's aimed at small to medium-sized businesses. And part of that has been to look at the legal side, and so they had their legal counsel look at that, and that, I believe the due date for publishing this thing is, I think it's like either October or November. So there'll be some specific legal advice in there, and it was specific to Europe, and I think it even noted, some of the country differences as well.
Okay.
Roger.
Okay. First of all, great talk.
Thank you.
You showed a slide about virtual private cloud from Amazon, and you have a small icon which shows some security. Do they define how they do security, SSL, IPsec, or do they offer maybe some, we run some MPLS VPN and it's secure, so because you are over the network transferring some information to different data centers, you don't know why, and is it feasible to do such some attacks like we showed in the MPLS?
It's a good question. Based on what they said, it was standard IPsec VPN, so they weren't talking about needing to deploy any additional devices. So they've got the VPN endpoint their side. Obviously, if you don't have a VPN endpoint, you need to deploy one. Now, there was no mention of, they didn't talk about, it's very brief, it just says industry standard IPsec, which obviously the devil's in the details, but they didn't mention anything about MPLS or anything like that. But Amazon tend to be fairly high level. They have a security white paper. If you're interested, you can. I think it's like Amazon AWS, Amazon.com, I think, and /security, and they have this white paper, and it's one of those things which I think it satisfies a lot of people. Like, it's got a fairly high level view on how they do security. But I think if you work in an enterprise and you look at that document, you're just like, wow, you've just opened up a can of worms. Like, there's so much stuff there which is kind of curious as to how they would do it, and some of the side effects of doing it that way. So they're very high level in what they publish, publicly. So all the people that want a beer, if you want to come up to me at the end, then I'll actually remember who you are, but please don't everybody charge.
Oh, we have one more question.
Oh, one more. Didier.
Yeah, Craig, I want to close. Last question. You, as a specialist, an expert in cloud and in beer, what is the proper amount, according to you, the proper amount of beer head?
The proper amount of beer head?
Yeah.
It depends which country you're in. If you're in England and you get served beer with a head, there's going to be a fight. If you're in Hungary and they serve, so I live in Hungary these days, if you're in Hungary and they serve a beer and it doesn't have a head, people think it's flat. Yeah. Over here, what have I seen? Well, last night I had quite a good introduction to, well, not really an introduction, but a good rerun of Belgian beer. But I don't think there was really head on. It wasn't on the degustation that we did. There wasn't really head on any of those beers when they were served. So I don't know what's the correct answer. Do I have to buy you a beer and you show me? I could do that.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
Sorry, I didn't know the answer to that one.
I actually have another last question. I'm sorry.
Oh, hello.
You were showing an excerpt of a paper that was written on, I think from a university or something.
Yeah.
That was written on how you could target an actual physical host machine. Could you elaborate a little bit on this technique, or is there a white paper that you would suggest to read?
Yeah, actually, if you go to my blog, I wrote a fairly extended piece. It's like the second or third oldest blog item. So just go to cloudsecurity.org. It's on the right-hand side. There'll be just like latest articles. You just click that, and there's a link in the first sentence if you just want to read the paper, or you can read my summary of it. But it's good, and there's the other stuff that's in the paper that I didn't really have time to mention, but I will now, is side channel attacks. I've always been fascinated by side channel attacks. I think they're one of the most interesting types of attacks that exist on systems, and it's really hard to eliminate side channel attacks. You have to spend millions like the military does. But there's side channel attacks obviously on virtualization, and